when U.S. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez AOC reportedly asked security to remove President Ibrahim Traoré from a heated setting. No one expected what happened next. Instead of confrontation, Traoré's bold but surprising reaction left the room stunned and the internet buzzing. This shocking moment caught on camera has sparked debate worldwide, and it's one you need to see. It was supposed to be just another international dialogue in Washington. Leaders from across Africa had flown in to meet U.S. lawmakers, and the room was packed with cameras, microphones, and flashing lights. President Ibrahim Traoré sat quietly near the front, his eyes calm, hands folded on the table. The discussions had gone smoothly until the tone shifted. Voices grew louder. A few lawmakers pressed Traoré with sharp questions about his leadership, his stance against foreign interference, and his bold words about African dignity. The air thickened. Then, in a moment that stunned everyone, U.S. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez leaned toward security and said words that echoed across the microphones. "Please remove him." Gasps filled the room. Journalists froze mid-sentence. Cameras zoomed in. The head of state being asked to leave. It was unthinkable. All eyes turned to Traoré. Would he argue? Would he walk out in anger? Would he fight back with sharp words? Instead, he simply sat still, silent, watching. The room was braced for confrontation. But no one, not even AOC herself, could have predicted the way Traoré would respond. For a long moment, time seemed frozen. The security guards hesitated. They weren't sure what to do. After all, this was no ordinary guest. This was the president of Burkina Faso. Whispers broke out in the crowd. Some muttered in disbelief. Others covered their mouths in shock. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer, hungry for what would happen next. But Traoré didn't move. He leaned back gently in his chair, his face unreadable. Then, without raising his voice, he asked a single question. "Why should I leave a room where truth must be spoken?" His words weren't loud, but they cut through the tension like thunder. The entire hall went silent. AOC blinked, caught off guard. Her request had been bold, but she hadn't expected this response. Instead of anger, instead of confrontation, Traoré's calm challenge shifted the energy of the entire room. A reporter in the back whispered, "This is history," and indeed it was. The silence was so heavy that even the hum of the air conditioner felt loud. Everyone was waiting. Traoré slowly rose from his chair, but what he did next was something no one in that hall would ever forget. Every camera lens followed him as he stood. His tall frame commanded the room. Yet his steps were measured, quiet. He didn't storm out. He didn't raise a fist. Instead, he began walking toward AOC. Gasps followed each step. The guards shifted uneasily, unsure if they should intervene. But Traoré's face was not that of a man coming to fight. It was the face of a man carrying a burden heavier than insults. When he reached her table, he stopped. His voice was steady, gentle, but it carried across the hall. "Congresswoman, if you believe my presence is too heavy for this room, then perhaps it is not me who should leave, but the truth you fear to hear." The hall trembled with murmurs. Some clapped softly, unable to hold back. Others wiped their eyes at the sheer dignity in his words. AOC stared at him, momentarily speechless. For the first time, she looked smaller. Not because of her power, but because of the weight of his calm courage. And then Traoré did something that would make headlines worldwide. He extended his hand toward her. The room gasped again. The hall was frozen. Everyone's eyes locked on Ibrahim Traoré's outstretched hand toward AOC. No one could understand it. He wasn't angry, wasn't defensive. He was offering peace in the middle of hostility. The camera zoomed in on his hand, steady and firm, his eyes calm but piercing. AOC hesitated. Her face flickered between defiance and confusion. For a second it seemed she might refuse, but Traoré's next words broke through the wall between them. "I come here not as an enemy," he said softly, "but as a son of Africa, carrying the hopes of children who want only to live in dignity. If my presence troubles you, let this handshake remind you that we are all human first." The silence that followed was unbearable. Some lawmakers shifted uncomfortably. Others lowered their eyes in shame. A single clap rose from the back, hesitant. But it carried weight. AOC stared at his hand, and though she did not take it, she did not repeat her call for him to be removed. The air was thick with unspoken emotions. The internet would replay that moment endlessly, for extending peace where insult had been given. The session eventually moved on, but the mood had changed. Every word spoken afterward felt small compared to what had just happened. Journalists whispered furiously into their recorders. Tweets exploded across the internet. Hashtags began trending within minutes. Traoré moment. People argued online. Was this strength or weakness? Was it surrender or brilliance? Back in the hall, some lawmakers approached Traoré quietly during the recess. One senator leaned close and whispered, "I don't agree with everything you say, but today you showed more dignity than most of us ever could." Traoré only nodded, his face unreadable, but inside he carried the weight of his people. He hadn't flown to America for applause. He had come for recognition, to make the world hear Africa's cry for respect. Meanwhile, AOC sat silently in her seat, glancing at him from time to time. Something about his composure unsettled her. She was used to debates, too sharp arguments. But this was different. Outside the building, protesters and supporters clashed. Some waved African flags. Others carried signs reading, "Let Traoré speak." The streets of Washington felt the tension of the moment. The story was no longer confined to the room. It escaped into the world. That evening, back in his hotel room, Traoré sat by the window, watching the lights of Washington flicker against the night. His phone buzzed. Call from Ouagadougou. It was his chief of staff. But behind him, voices of ordinary Burkina could be heard. Farmers, teachers, even children had gathered around a single phone. They wanted to speak to their president. "Captain, we saw it," one elderly man said, his voice trembling. The whole village watched on a tiny screen. "He cried when they tried to shame you, but you stood with dignity. You showed them who we are." A child's voice cut in, small but clear. "Papa Traoré, don't let them push you away. We are proud." Traoré's eyes welled with tears. He turned away from the window, hiding his face in the dim light. "I will never stop fighting for you," he whispered. "Even if I stand alone in their halls, I carry you with me." The call ended, but the echoes of their voices stayed with him. What had happened today was bigger than him. It was now a story of an entire people refusing to be silenced. That night, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat alone in her office long after the cameras had stopped rolling. Her staff had gone home, but she couldn't shake the image of Traoré's outstretched hand. It replayed in her mind like a haunting melody. His calm eyes, the dignity in his voice, the refusal to meet hostility with anger. She had expected outrage, maybe even defiance, but instead, she was left unsettled. On her desk lay a stack of letters from activists. Some urged her to stand firm against foreign influence, but one handwritten note slipped under her door, pierced through her heart. It read, "Congresswoman, I watched today. That man carries the pain of millions who are forgotten. Please listen before you push him away." She leaned back in her chair, tears gathering in her eyes. For the first time, she questioned herself. Had she been too harsh? Had her pride silenced a voice worth hearing? The city outside was restless, but inside AOC's soul wrestled with something deeper. She had started a storm. Perhaps it wasn't him who would be changed. Perhaps it was her. By morning, the world was on fire. News channels replayed the clip of AOC's demand and Traoré's calm response. Commentators shouted over each other. Was this humility or manipulation? Why did a U.S. lawmaker nearly silence a visiting African leader who really held the power in that room? Social media was flooded with reactions. Africans across the continent shared the video with pride. "That is our leader," one post read. "He did not bow to insult. He rose above it." Meanwhile, in Europe and America, young people rallied behind Traoré. They saw in him something rare, a leader who spoke like a father, not a politician. At the hotel, Traoré avoided the noise of the media. But he could not ignore the hundreds of messages from strangers, letters of love, respect, even apologies on behalf of those who tried to silence him. In the streets of Burkina Faso, students gathered in schools watching the video on shared screens. Many cried, whispering, "He carries us with him." The storm had grown far beyond Washington. What was meant to be a quiet dismissal had turned into a global moment, and the week was far from over. The following day, something unexpected happened. AOC requested a private meeting with Traoré. It shocked everyone, her staff, the press, even her political allies. Some warned her it would look like weakness, but she insisted. In a small, quiet room away from cameras, she entered, eyes cautious. Traoré stood to greet her, but this time he didn't extend his hand. He waited. She spoke first. Her voice was low, almost trembling. "President Traoré, I want to understand. Yesterday, I reacted maybe too strongly, but I need to know why you carry yourself the way you do. Why peace when anger would be easier?" Lord Traoré looked at her for a long moment before answering, "Because I have buried too many young men who chose anger. My people deserve a future that is not built on rage, but on hope. If I raise my voice, I lose them. If I hold my peace, I remind them they still matter." AOC's eyes watered. She tried to blink the tears away, but one slipped down her cheek. That moment, she wasn't a congresswoman. She was simply a human being, moved beyond words. The press had been banned from Traoré and AOC's private meeting. Someone, perhaps a staffer, leaked a short audio clip. In the clip, AOC's voice cracked as she asked, "Why peace when anger would be easier?" And then came Traoré's answer, calm and heavy with truth, "Because I have buried too many young men who chose anger." That single sentence went viral within hours. News anchors replayed it. Podcasters dissected it. And millions of ordinary people shared it with tears in their eyes. In Harlem, an old African-American man whispered to his grandson, "Do you hear that? That is what a leader sounds like." In Ouagadougou, a young girl scribbled those very words in her notebook, promising to one day lead with the same strength. For AOC, the leak was embarrassing at first. But as she read messages from people thanking her for sitting down with Traoré, something shifted inside. What she had thought was political defeat was in truth a human awakening. The world wasn't laughing. The world was listening. And for the first time, she was listening too. By the fourth day, the hotel where Traoré stayed had turned into a gathering ground. At first, it was African students holding handmade signs. "Thank you for your dignity, President." But soon, the crowd grew. Immigrants, activists, even American. Veterans who saw in him a mirror of honor they once fought for. One evening, as Traoré prepared for another closed-door session, he walked outside to greet them. The crowd went silent, cameras flashing, but he did not wave like a celebrity. He simply raised his voice. "My brothers and sisters, I am not here to be praised. I am here to remind the world that Africa is not weak. We are strong, but we want peace, not pity." Tears rolled freely in the crowd. A young woman shouted, "You speak for us all." Another man dropped to his knees in respect. Security tried to pull him back inside, but Traoré refused until he had shaken hands with as many people as possible. That moment was caught live on dozens of phones. By nightfall, it became the most watched clip on social media. The man who was almost silenced was now giving voice to millions. The next morning, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did something no one expected. She stood before reporters and spoke, not as a politician, but as a woman humbled. "I want to be honest with you all," she began, her voice trembling. "When I asked for President Traoré to be removed, I thought I was protecting this space. But I was wrong. I wasn't protecting. It was my pride speaking, not my heart." There was a gasp among the journalists. AOC paused, then continued. "In the past few days, I've listened, and what I heard broke me. This man's calm is not weakness. It is the strength that our divided world is starving for." Across the ocean in Burkina Faso, children in classrooms cheered when they saw the footage. On the streets of New York, strangers hugged, saying they felt something had shifted. And inside his hotel room, Traoré watched quietly, saying nothing. But those close to him noticed his eyes glisten, not because of victory, but because of reconciliation. The story was no longer about conflict. It was about transformation. And the world leaned in, waiting for what would unfold next. On the fifth day, just before another tense session, Traoré received a handwritten letter from Ouagadougou. It had been rushed through diplomatic channels. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. It was from his mother. "My son," it read, "I see the videos. I see you standing tall, not with fists, but with words. Do not forget, when your father was killed in the war, it was not the bullet that destroyed us. It was the silence of those who said nothing. Do not be silent." Traoré folded the paper slowly, his eyes wet. That letter gave him more strength than any speechwriter, any applause. Later that day, when he entered the room with lawmakers and journalists, he carried the letter in his pocket. He wasn't just representing Burkina Faso anymore. He was carrying the weight of every mother who had ever buried a child because leaders chose anger over peace. People noticed the change in his eyes that day. They didn't know about the letter, but they felt it. That same evening, as Traoré stepped out of his car, an elderly American veteran pushed through the crowd with the help of a cane. Security moved to block him, but Traoré raised his hand. The veteran's voice trembled. "Sir, I fought in wars I didn't understand. I saw young men die on both sides. When I hear you speak, I think if someone like you had been in power, then maybe my friends would still be alive." The man's eyes filled with tears as he saluted. The crowd fell silent. Traoré gently lowered the man's hand and hugged him. "Your pain is not wasted," he whispered. "It has become a seed for peace." Phones captured every second. By midnight, the image of a Burkina president embracing a broken American veteran circled the globe. Hashtags trended in dozens of countries. And while some debated politics, most people didn't. They just cried. They cried because, for once, a leader's humanity was louder than his titles. On the sixth day, the unexpected happened. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the very woman who once demanded his removal, requested a private call with Traoré. He agreed. The room was quiet when the call began, aides stepping back to give them space. "Mr. President," she said, her tone softer than ever before, "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you gratitude because you reminded me why I came into politics. In the first place, it's not to fight people, but to fight for people." Traoré did not smile. He simply replied, "Then let us fight together, not with anger, but with truth." AOC's eyes glistened. For a moment, two figures from very different worlds found common ground. News of their reconciliation spread fast. Some mocked it, but many saw hope. The kind of hope that crosses oceans and cultures. And for the first time in that tense week, the world paused, not in outrage, but in reflection. The last day of the week arrived. Cameras filled the hall, and the air was heavy with anticipation. Many expected Traoré to be defensive, to deliver a fiery statement after days of tension. But when he stood, the silence was almost unbearable. He placed his mother's letter on the podium and began. "I came here not to be liked, not to win applause, but to remind us all of something simple. A child in Africa is not worth less than a child in America. A mother's tears in Ouagadougou are the same as a mother's tears in New York." His voice trembled, but never broke. "If we as leaders cannot see each other as human first, then we have already failed the people who trusted us." The room once filled with hostility was quiet, dead quiet. Some lawmakers lowered their heads, others wiped their eyes. And in that silence, Traoré had achieved what no shouting, no protest, no walkout ever could. He had made them listen with their hearts. When he finished, no one moved for a moment. The weight of his words lingered like a heavy cloud. Then slowly, someone stood up. It was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Her hands clapped first, breaking the silence. Others followed. Within seconds, the entire hall was on their feet. An unexpected thunderous standing ovation. Cameras captured tears streaming down faces that once showed anger. People weren't just applauding a man. They were applauding courage, honesty, and raw truth. The veteran who had embraced him earlier that week was seated at the back. He struggled to stand, but when he did, he saluted once more, this time with pride instead of pain. And in that powerful image, the old veteran saluting AOC, clapping through tears, and a young African leader standing firm, the world saw something unforgettable. By nightfall, the video had gone viral, not because of controversy, not because of politics, but because for once, humanity had won. The next morning, millions across the globe woke up to the video. Streets in Burkina Faso filled with young people, waving flags, chanting Traorés' name. In New York, strangers stopped each other on the subway, showing the clip on their phones. Commentators called it the moment that shook politics. Teachers played it in classrooms. Families cried watching it at dinner tables. The message was clear. Empathy is stronger than power. Traoré, however, remained humble. When asked how he felt, he replied softly, "If one child believes tonight that peace is possible, then my journey here was worth it." That humility broke people's hearts even more. Not arrogance, not pride, just truth. And so, a week that began with hostility ended with unity, respect, and tears that connected continents. My dear viewers, if this story touched you, if you felt even one tear roll down your cheek, then don't just watch and move on. Show the world you believe in peace and humility in leaders who speak from the heart. Click like to spread this message. Hit subscribe so you don't miss more stories that touch the soul, and please drop a comment below. Tell us what part of Traoré's journey moved you the most, because together your likes, your words, your presence can make this story live forever.